don't know how excited I am to make this video. 1 year ago, I made this exact same thing, where I took players from the 2013 up until the 2020 NHL draft, and I ranked them based on the labels of franchise, generational, and elite. This season, this year, we're doing the same thing. We're taking a look at 2015 up until 2022 and filling out the chart with players that I think fall under the elite, franchise, and generational levels. Now, to me, an elite player is a solid first-line player who can consistently get upwards of 60, 70 points in a season and do that at a pretty stable rate. Most NHL teams, if not all NHL teams, have elite players. Once in a while, you'll see these guys get traded, but for the most part, elite players are the ones that stay on your team because they make you quite better. Going over to our franchise label, franchise players are players who, to me, define franchises. And these are players that no matter what team they played on, they would still define franchises. I used this example last year, Brock Boeser. I don't think he is a franchise player, I think he is an elite player, because I think in his prime he'll be able to consistently get upwards of 60, 70 points in a year, but he doesn't define a franchise in the same way, let's say, the Sedins did. The Sedins in their prime, to me, they were franchise players, but Boeser is not. A franchise guy is a guy that rarely gets traded, he rarely moves, and he stays on his team for mostly his entire career because they're so good and they're such big difference makers that they create huge holes if they're taken away from any NHL club. They define a franchise. And as for generational, well, these guys only come around once in a generation. When it comes to defense, when it comes to forwards, there's usually only one or two, depending on who you want to look at, per generation. Crosby and Ovechkin, generational players. Ovechkin is a generational goal scorer. Crosby is a generational center. Obviously, it would be easy to take a look at where things play out. So we have this blank template over here, and I'm going to be going year by year, filling out the players and the rankings for each year. Now, just a quick disclaimer at the beginning, not every single player is going to be listed on here. First off, I don't have that much space. Second off, I don't want to put labels on too many people this early on. Some of these guys that are going to be listed on here are really, really good, which is why they're listed in the first place, but not everybody who could be defined as elite or whatever is going to be on here. So just based off of that, it's not going to be complete, but these are just notable people that I believe should, and probably do, have the ratings that I give them. Starting things off with the elite side for 2015, we have ourselves Brock Boeser, Matthew Barzal, Kyle Connor, Timo Meier, and Thomas Chabot. These are all incredible players, really good, elite, solid first-line players. Chabot is looking towards being a potential top 2 defenseman. Connor, obviously, he got 30-something goals last season. He's looking to be really good. Boeser has 40-goal potential. Barzal had already hit 80 points in his first season, and Timo Meier is just an absolute stud for the San Jose Sharks. Moving on to elite franchise, so this is our borderline. They're a bit better than elite, but they're not yet franchise in my opinion. We have Sebastian Aho, Mitch Marner, Mikko Rantanen, Ivan Provorov, and Zach Werenski. Provorov and Werenski, two Norris caliber defenders going towards the later portions of their careers. Aho, Marner, Rantanen, all phenomenal talents as well. Just incredible. Could be first liners on most teams that they could play for, and it's obvious why they're in this range. Going on to franchise for 2015, we have ourselves Jack Eichel. Not too much of a surprise there. Eichel is a phenomenal player for the Buffalo Sabres. He's got 90, maybe even 100-point potential, and he's still so young. He's a franchise-defining player. And generational for 2015, the only generational on this list, we have Connor McDavid. I don't even need to explain this one. Going over into 2016, for Elite, I have Matthew Tkachuk, Alex DeBrincat, Clayton Keller, and Pierre-Luc Dubois. These are all players who, in their primes, to me, max out as great Elite first-line players. They're all really solid, they can all put up big numbers. Some of them, like Dubois and Tkachuk, have other assets of their games that they excel at more, but DeBrincat, the goal scorer, Keller, the lethal offensive threat, these two have some great assets as well. Going over into Elite Franchise for 2016, I have Patrik Laine. I had Laine at Franchise last season, but his down year really did spoil me a little bit in terms of what I believe his potential could be, but Laine is still the second best player in the 2016 NHL draft, and the guy who, in my opinion, has the second best potential. Which is why, for Franchise, I have Austin Matthews. And it's kind of weird, because if Matthews was healthy for the majority of his career, I could really easily just put him in the Franchise generational section, but the injuries and all that catching up to him, it limits me towards only labeling him as a Franchise guy, but no matter what team Franchise players would play for, they would define the franchise, and Matthews does just that on the Toronto Maple Leafs. Going over into 2017, for Elite, we have Nico Hischier, Cody Glass, and Robert Thomas. Three phenomenal players. Hischier already broken into the league, he's got 2 seasons under his belt. He was a really good first-line player for the Devils. Cody Glass and Robert Thomas, 2 players who haven't had the most NHL experience. Thomas went in the playoff run, and Cody Glass looks like he'll make his debut next season, but these 2 guys have some incredible NHL potential too. For Elite Franchise, I have 2 defensemen, Cale Makar, Miro Heiskanen, 2 Norris-caliber defenders heading into the primes of their careers. Makar played his first early NHL stint in the playoffs where he absolutely shined, and Heiskanen was amazing all year round as a 19-year-old this past season. For Franchise, we have Elias Pettersson. And last year, I put Pettersson for Elite Franchise, with a question mark, and I said, hey, you know, he probably has this potential, maybe he does, maybe he doesn't, and y'all got mad in the comments, you were calling me a homer. Nah, we got Pettersson in Franchise now because he's proven it. I've been on this train for a year, and I stick by it. He is a franchise player, and I knew it last year too. But not everyone was on board with it, but I think there's a pretty good consensus now that Pettersson is a franchise player. Going over into 2018, this is where things get really interesting because I didn't want to take everybody's name, but I did take a selection of players. As I said, it's not everybody who's going to be on this list, but only some really notable players. For Elite in 2018, I have Jesperi Kotkaniemi, Brady Tkachuk, Filip Zadina, and Adam Boqvist. 2 of these players already stepped into the league full-time. Kotkaniemi and Tkachuk had great NHL seasons at 18, 19 years of age, and they were really good. The other 2, Zadina played in the NHL a little bit, he had a really good goal in the power play, which was awesome to see, and Adam Boqvist is a really skilled offensive defenseman. Going over into Elite Franchise, we have Andrei Svechnikov, Quinn Hughes, and Vitaly Kravtsov. Svechnikov was pretty good in his first NHL season as an 18-year-old, and he's got so much potential as a big, strong Russian goal scorer, and playing alongside of other Elite Franchise players like Sebastian Aho is really going to be beneficial for his career. Quinn Hughes, yeah, second best demon of the draft. Super dynamic, super skilled, super offensively aware, such a great player for the Vancouver Canucks, and Vitaly Kravtsov was under half a point a game in the KHL as an 18 turning 19-year-old. He's going to be really, really good, and I think there's a lot of undervaluing going on with Kravtsov, but he's a really good NHL prospect, and he was already tearing things up at a pro league level, so where he goes from here, I'm really excited to see. And then, the first franchise generational player on this list, we have Rasmus Dahlin, who is better than all the other defensemen on this list, and it's not even close. He's the best defender the NHL has seen in a draft since Potvin, and he's got that reputation for a reason. Going over into 2019, now, there are a lot of elite players, but I only put a few. For elite players in 2019, we have ourselves Alex Turcotte and Trevor Zegras. Again, there are more, but I only put down 2 here because they are right at the top of the draft, and I can confidently say they have that potential. Going over into Elite Franchise, we have Bowen Byram. I'm putting him here because it's the same class as Cale Makar, Miro Heiskanen, Werenski, Provorov. I do believe that Byram does have that same ceiling as a top 2 D-man in the NHL, and he's going to be really good with Cale Makar. That's going to be such a scary pairing, oh my goodness. And then for franchise, I do have Kaapo Kakko and Hughes in the same tier. And that's mostly because I don't think Hughes is good enough to be considered franchise generational, and I think Kakko is too good for Elite Franchise, because some of the other guys here, like Aho, Rantanen, Laine, these other Finnish players in the Elite Franchise category, I do believe Kakko is better than them. So having him here in the franchise category does make sense, just based off of where everyone else is placed, and Kaapo Kakko does have such a high ceiling of an offensive threat in the NHL that I do believe that franchise potential does make sense. Now into 2020, the drafts that haven't gone on yet. For Elite, we have Cole Perfetti, Jamie Drysdale, and Tim Stützle. Stützle is going to be a stud, the next Draisaitl in terms of German production as an 18, 17-year-old in the drafts. Jamie Drysdale is a great offensive defenseman in the OHL, and Cole Perfetti, nicknamed the Genius on the ice because of his elite hockey IQ, is going to be a great NHL player. For Elite Franchise, now it's kinda packed here for this one, but I have Lucas Raymond, Noel Gunler, Alex Holtz, and Anton Lundell. These 4 are incredibly great talents, and they're all in this range in my opinion because they're all so skilled. They all have potential that is higher than Elite in my opinion, and if there was anybody that I believe could definitely transcend that Elite label, it would be these guys over here, and they're so highly touted so early on, it's actually crazy just how good they've been thus far. Then going into franchise for 2020, we have Quinton Byfield, a huge center who skates like the wind and dekes like a magician out there, who's got some really good offensive skills despite being huge in the OHL. He's a franchise talent. If there's anybody that's going to challenge for also being franchised, I think Anton Lundell has that on lock too. But for now, I have Byfield as a franchise guy. These rankings might change next year, but this is what I have for now. And for franchise generational, we have Alexis Lafreniere, a player who I had as franchise last year, but throughout the past year has really showcased to me that he is better than that, which is why I have him here just underneath the generational tag. Then in 2021, we have some really good elite talent. There's actually so much more elite talent in this draft, but I don't have room. What I have on the board right here is Dylan Guenther, Matthew Beniers, Joshua Waugh, and Brennan Othman. These are all really highly touted players so far early on. Othman was 2nd overall in the OHL draft. Waugh was 1st overall in the QMJHL draft. Beniers is looking to be a really good US NTDP player. He played for the U18 team this year, and he was at 20 points in 20 games. Absolutely filthy numbers for a 15, 16-year-old playing with the same team as Jack Hughes, Cole Caulfield, etc. And Dylan Guenther is looking towards being really good in his WHL career. Going over into Elite Franchise, we have the 2 best players of the draft, Aatu Räty and Brandt Clarke. Räty is a 16-year-old forward who was dominating the U20 league. He was just under a point per game there, and he's going to potentially play in the Liga as early as next season. And Brandt Clarke is an OHL rookie defenseman who's going to have a really good year, and he's going to have that same ceiling, in my opinion, as Cale Makar, Heiskanen, and Quinn Hughes. Going over into 2022, for Elite, we have Connor Geekie and Rutger McGroarty. Connor Geekie was taken 2nd overall in the WHL entry draft, and he has some really good minor numbers. Taking a look at what he's done, he projects towards being an elite player, and Rutger McGroarty had better 15-year-old numbers in his major bantam league than Alex Turcotte. In fact, McGroarty was the best player in his league's history as a 15-year-old, which is really impressive. Then going over into franchise generational, we're skipping the elite franchise and we're skipping the franchise, going right over to the 2nd best tag, Shane Wright, Matthew Savoie, and Brad Lambert. These three are better than franchise. They're not generational, but they're better than franchise. These three are looking towards being the next best NHL players coming out of these drafts since Lafreniere, Dahlin, and all three of these forwards have such bright NHL futures. Shane Wright, first overall in the OHL draft. Savoie, first overall in the WHL draft. Incredible, incredible years so far. And Brad Lambert actually doing so well as a youngin, playing in the Finnish leagues as well. Keep a tab on all of these guys because they're going to be great NHL talents when they come in. So I'm going to talk about most of these guys in the next few years in different videos, so pay attention to that when that does come out. But for now, the gameplay is running out, so I hope you enjoyed this video. Socials99, and bye.